Hi, today we're making the third flower in the Quilty Chicks quilt. This one is super fun. You'll grab all the little background squares that you cut earlier. There are a ton. And then you'll cut 2 different fabrics for your flower petals. These flower petals can be the same color or different. I like them the same color. And if you're going to do them the same color, you'll need to make sure one is lighter than the other so that there's a contrast and they don't all blend together. You'll also cut out some teeny tiny little squares and some flower centers. We're going to be doing a lot of stitch and flipping on this flower. You can either draw a line from corner to corner on each of these little pieces, or you can eyeball it and sew from corner to corner without marking. It's short enough that I'm going to do it without marking. One way to speed construction is to prep as much as you can and then sew it all at once. So we're going to walk through this and see what we can prep. So step 1, we're going to be taking our dark fabric and we'll need to sew 2 squares on adjacent corners, and we'll sew from here to here. Now, since they overlap, we won't be able to like pin and get those, prep all of that at the same time. So we'll just pin one on and then move on to our other pieces. Now, if you want to just place it on the corner and sew right at the sewing machine without pinning, that is just fine. Whatever works best for you. Now that the step 1 pieces are prepped, we can prep the step 2 pieces. These are so small that I don't think I'm going to pin them. You can, but I think I'll just put them on the corners when I get over to the sewing machine. So either pin or just move these aside. And now our lighter squares, we'll look at step 4. Sorry, step 1 was drawing the lines. Step 2 was pinning this. Step 3 was prepping the flower center, and this is step 4. So, sorry for any confusion. We're going to have 2 of these background pieces on opposite corners and sew from corner to corner. Now the seams don't overlap, so we can put both of these on and sew them at the same time. All right, now that we have these 3 units prepped, let's go to the sewing machine and start sewing. All right, I've brought all my prepared units over, and I'll start with these first purple squares. Remember, we're going to sew from corner to corner, not from this corner to this corner. That kind of ends in nowhere, so just side to side. All right, let's get going. I like to decrease my stitch length when I'm doing this. I find, I don't know, I just like it better. And it seems to do better with my machine getting onto these corners. Again, just like I tell my kids when they're learning to drive, keep your eye where you want to go and just sew towards that corner. Eye on the corner, take the needle out, keep going towards that corner, and boom. And then just repeat for all of these purple squares. Now that I've got all these done, we'll move on to these little guys. So we're gonna sew one of your petal squares onto the flower middle, each flower middle, and just sew from corner to corner. These are so tiny. And I'm just gonna lift up, pull it out a little bit, and add the next one. And we'll see how that goes. Actually, I don't like that. I'm just gonna cut the thread. I thought it might speed things up. It does not. And that's okay. We can try new things, see what works, see what doesn't work, which is sometimes more important, and adjust. All right, flower center is done. Now we're going to sew from corner to corner on both of these background squares. Again, I like to go right up to the edge and start sewing. Keep your eye on the corner and just go all the way off the edge. Now it's up to you. You could cut the thread and do the second one. Or you could keep on going and just do all the squares on this side and then flip all the squares on that side. Either one works. All right, we're all done with these and these and these. Let's take them over to the cutting mat and trim and iron them. Now we'll cut these apart and trim off the corner about 1/4 inch from the seam. You can do this with a rotary cutter and ruler, but these pieces are so small you can just eyeball it with your scissors. So let's cut them apart, trim off the edge, and do that for all of the pieces. With all the corners trimmed off, we can press these units. Refer to the instructions for the direction of pressing. For these in general, we're going to be pressing towards the middle, towards the flower fabric. So let's get started. Except for these ones where we're pressing towards the middle, but it's towards the yellow flower center, not towards the petal fabric. These little bitty pieces are a little bit tricksy. After you have them pressed, I think it'll be a good idea to do one more long press on top to really make sure those little corners are where you want to be. The flower centers are done, these petals are done, and all we need to do for these is to sew a square on an adjacent corner. It could be this one, it could be that one. It really doesn't matter. It turns out to be the same thing. So I'm just going to pin all these in place. I'm going to go sew these and I'll be right back. I have the second square sewn on from corner to corner. I'm going to trim, press, and then we'll lay these all out and put the block together. Unlike the other corner, we're going to press out towards the background fabric this time. That just helps the seam from getting quite as bulky, and everything will lay a little bit better. All right, let's lay these out. All right, so I start here up at the top left corner and sew these two units together using a 1/4 inch seam. And because of the way we pressed, these seams will nest together. You can rub them together and feel them butting right up against each other. And that's a great way to make sure that the points are all lined up. All right, I've sewn those together without cutting the threads. I'm going to sew these units together. And then sew these units together, again, lining up and nesting those seams. If possible, with one side, because we pressed the background out on one of them, they might not all nest, but most will. All right, and then we lay this back out again. Open up the units. And add this one to the top unit. Now without cutting, I'm going to add this to the middle unit. And the only thing you need to be careful about is that you don't get the orientation mixed up between the table and the sewing machine. You can prep these and pin them together ahead of time. That works just fine. That works just fine too. But I wouldn't pin all three together. I would pin, these two together before sewing the second set on. Otherwise, it's going to get confusing and you're going to prick yourself with all those pins. All right. Next, I'm going to follow the instructions in the pattern and press these, and then we'll come back and sew them together. Okay. Now that it's pressed, we'll just sew these rows together. Again, you'll want to line up the seams. They should nest together really nice. Yay, we're here for the final press. We're gonna set those seams so that they open up really nice. And then we're gonna press out from the center. And take your time, really giving it a good press. All right. It's so cute. So we've got our flower, and we'll make 2 of these and then sew them with our flower stems. We are getting so close to being done. I can't wait to see all your cute flowers and to see your blocks come together into a super cute chicken quilt. Thanks for sewing along.